for attending today's webinar. I will take you through the first part of the presentation. Afterwards, my colleague Denitsa will take care of the rest. Next slide, please. So this webinar is organized under the SECURER Project, which is an EU-funded initiative that aims to support teachers and schools across Europe in building inclusive and digitally competent learning environments. So along with our partners, we've developed an online hub with diverse resources, mentoring programs, and interactive events like this one that you're attending. So the project aims to enhance professional learning on inclusive practices, improve digital literacy and strategic ICT use, provide online hub of tools and resources, and share good practices across Europe. So this webinar also is part of a series of other webinars under the same project, which is SECURER. Today, we will talk about inclusion, misconceptions, and myths, while other partners will tackle other topics such as equity and inclusion in education or positive behavioral interventions. So today's webinar has three main goals. First, we want to help educators build skills and feel more confident bringing inclusive education into classrooms. Second, we'll focus on encouraging positive, inclusive teaching habits that make every student feel welcome and involved, no matter what their background is. And lastly, we'll share real stories and examples to show you how these inclusive practices work in real life and how you can apply them too. So today we will cover an understanding of what inclusive education really means. We will debunk common myths and misconceptions. We will learn inclusive strategies and tools from the SECURER project. And by the end, we'll have a Q&A session along with a discussion. So when you hear the word inclusion, what comes to your mind? So actually, inclusion is a hot topic, but it's often misunderstood. And our goal today is to deconstruct myths that may be limiting to inclusive practices in classrooms. But first, we would like to hear from you. So please scan the following QR code. It will lead you to a very short questionnaire. Please share your opinion with us, or also if you are confident or if you would like to share your opinion orally, please feel free to do so. We will give you minutes for you to fill the form. Yes, we can see the first answers. It's very interesting.
Yes, it means that everyone has access and equal rights, and inclusion is meant for everyone regardless of their ability or disability. But as someone noted, it is difficult in practice.
Maybe we can move on to the next question.
Yes.
So if you think about your current school or schools that you have either studied or taught, how would you rate the environment?
Maybe inclusion has to do with providing with like equal opportunities to everybody. For example, in education, that everybody has the right tools or opportunities to be part of the larger group in education.
Thank you for your input. Indeed, by creating opportunities and using the right tools, we can break barriers.
Okay, so most of us unfortunately have had a somewhat inclusive school environment.
So we can jump to the next question.
Yep. The next question is, do you use any assistive technologies or inclusive tools in your classroom? And if yes, which? Okay, then we can move to the next one. Screen readers and text-to-speech. Canva and Prezi, which are presentation tools. I did not have any experience with that so far. Okay. Next question is, in your experience, to what extent do these create barriers for successful inclusion? And you can rate them from not being a barrier to a major barrier. Okay, so people find that insufficient training is the major barrier within those. School administration also creates barriers for the implementation of inclusion.
Then bullying and discrimination, unfortunately, is there as well. Okay, maybe we can jump to the next one. Thank you so much all for your contributions. It was very interesting to know how your opinions about the topic. So now we'll jump to explaining the concept of inclusion. So the concept of inclusion is not just about having students with disabilities in general classrooms. It's a much broader topic than that. Inclusion means that we should create a learning environments where every student feels valued, supported, and able to succeed. So no matter their background, ability, language, culture, gender, learning style, etc. So we don't aim to treat all students exactly the same, but instead we aim to meet students where they are and give them the tools and space to thrive in their own way. Could you please go to the next slide? So now we will jump to the common misconceptions and about inclusion. So the first one is that many educators think that inclusion means treating every student exactly the same, which is wrong. It means giving every student the same worksheet or the same test. This is actually also wrong. Because it's basically not fair. So because not everyone learns the same way. So for example, if one student needs, for example, extra time or a different way to show what they know, inclusion means making that happen so everyone has a chance to succeed. The second one is inclusion is only for students with disabilities. So actually a lot of people assume that inclusion is just for kids with disabilities, but really inclusion is about everyone. So imagine a classroom with students who speak different languages or come from different cultures or have different learning styles. Inclusion simply means making sure all these students feel welcome and supported. The third most common myth is that inclusive classrooms lower the academic standards. So some teachers mostly think that that including students with different needs means that they have to dumb down the classroom, but actually research shows exactly the opposite. So when you use flexible teaching methods, all students often do better because the lessons are more engaging, more flexible, and more relevant for everyone. The fourth one is that inclusion is too difficult for regular teachers. So it's true, it can feel challenging, especially at the beginning, and especially when we don't have much support and training. But with the right tools and support, any teacher can learn to create a classroom where all students feel included and can thrive. The fifth one is that inclusion slows down the rest of the class. So some teachers worry that helping students with extra needs will hold back everyone. but often the opposite happens. So when you plan lessons that work for different learners, you actually keep the whole class more engaged, which helps everyone move forwards together. And last but not least, inclusion only benefits students with special needs. So many might think that inclusion just helps a few students, but in reality, it benefits the whole class. So when students, for example, learn to work together and appreciate differences, they develop empathy, teamwork, and a better understanding of the world, which are also very important skills. So for now, I'll give the lead to my colleague Denitsa to go on with the rest of the presentation.
Thank you. So we will debunk the myths more concretely by also providing what, in fact, is the reality of the implementation of it when we have inclusion happening. And the first one is the myth of that inclusion means mainstreaming students with disabilities without the support. When actually in reality, inclusion involves adapting methods, materials which support students to participate and learn in a meaningful um, environment. So it's not simply to sink or swim, but it's more effective when we have, for example, individualized educational plans, there is resource support and different co-teaching methods. And according to UNESCO, inclusion requires schools to remove barriers and build a system that accepts diversity as normal. From the SECURER Project, we have gathered different practices from the partner countries. And an example from our findings are Joe Screens Reader, Kurzweil 3000, and Braille presentation guides that support visually impaired students to participate and stay and be included in the mainstream education. The next myth is that inclusion benefits only students with special needs. Actually, inclusion helps create a better learning environment for all students when applied well, and when we actually have inclusion in the classroom, we have neurotypical and high achieving learners learning from each other. So, also, research shows that inclusive classrooms improve social and emotional learning, empathy, and collaborative skills for everyone. And the universal learning design principles benefit all learners by offering multiple ways to engage, represent, and express their knowledge. So inclusion is not bringing people into what exists, but creating the spaces where everyone learns together. Next, we have the myth of that inclusion lowers the academic standards, and that if we are adapting the content for all learners, it means that teachers and the educational system has to lower its standards. In reality, inclusion is about maintaining the high expectations while providing different ways to achieve them. The focus is on adapting the ways of teaching so everyone can learn. There is a differentiation and scaffolding that make academic success possible without diluting the curriculum. The research from the Council of Exceptional Children showed that students in inclusive settings perform equally or better than those in segregated classrooms. And inclusive classrooms emphasize mastery and deep understanding, not simply the performance. Another tool from the SECURE project is the Programming in School, which is a high standard self-paced learning program where students can adapt to their pace and learn depending on how they progress. Next, we have the myth that teachers aren't trained or equipped for inclusion. The training is crucial, and inclusion is possible through ongoing professional development, collaboration, and the use of available tools. There are existing resources, however, people, teachers, and administrators are not having access or not provided access for them. There are many projects like SECURE and other Erasmus programs that provide quality resources and professional development and trainings. There is inclusive teaching is growing with experience, peer collaboration, and learning communities. So with Secure, we want to bring the focus on these practices, sharing knowledge and collaboration between schools, our partner schools who share their practices, and we bring them through webinars and through the Learning Hub. The next myth is that inclusion disrupts the learning environment. Well, actually, inclusive classrooms improve the classroom culture, cooperation, and reduce the disruptive behavior over time when it's applied. It's shown in research that the inclusive practices like positive behavior support or peer mediation reduce disruptions in the long term. Inclusive behavior models such as the positive behavior intervention and support benefit all learners. The classroom then becomes a more accepting and respectful space when students are exposed to diversity early on. Another tool from the SECURE project is the hand-in-hand game, which teaches sign language and builds more acceptance within the classroom. Since we covered some of the myths and reflected on how in reality when inclusion is applied it can benefit the whole classroom. Here we have a short overview of the main benefits of inclusion when and how it looks in reality. So when we have inclusion in schools, as said, we can benefit all students, not only with emotional intelligence, but also bring everyone at a good academic level. It fosters empathy and collaboration and can boost the self-esteem of students. It prepares students for diverse real-world settings and requires a flexible and responsive teaching approach. The barriers that we also had in the beginning to reflect on, and here to summarize them in short, usually we have the systematic barriers, which are the lack of funding or teacher training, or not inclusive policies. Other institutional barriers are, for example, the overcrowded classrooms and rigid curricula. And individual barriers are unconscious biases, fear of differences, and the resistance of change. Here we have an example of a best practice that was applied in Finland. This was a form of primary school in Helsinki in Finland, and it launched a school-wide initiative that was called Everyone Belongs program, and it was designed to support neurodivergent students. The key steps included redesigning the classrooms to reduce the sensory overload and offering professional development to teachers, along with creating peer support networks so that the children don't feel isolated. They involved also parents from the beginning of the program to help bridge school-home communication. And the results after 1 year of the program were 40% increase in student engagement, also fewer incidents of bullying, and overall better class dynamics. So this is one of the examples of how schools achieve inclusion. The next one is an example of a project in Portugal. It shows the main idea was to turn schools into learning communities by using dialogic evidence-based practices to boost the inclusion of learning. The project is called Incluet and was applied in 2 schools where they started with interviews of student groups, also focus groups, and observations and documentation. They then organized more interactive groups in the school, more dialogic literary art gatherings, community volunteers in the class, and dialogic teachers. They also had more time in the learning and had assemblies, school assemblies for conflicts resolution. The results at the end were that family and community participation rose. There were more gains in academic motivation and socioeconomical skills, socio-emotional skills. And there was movement toward more inclusive school culture. However, there were still challenges as the project was applied in the beginning while the COVID pandemic had started. Teachers had difficulties with engagement or available resources. At the end, these are a few tips for inclusive teaching. First, is to create predictable classroom structures, as routines can use anxiety and support executive functioning. Next is to use flexible grouping and peer support by encouraging collaboration, peer tutoring, and rotating groups so that it helps students of different abilities to feel valued and included. The third one is to provide information in multiple formats by bringing diverse learners and combining different materials supported with visuals, audios, gestures, and real objects. The other one is to promote growth mindset in students by praising their effort and their learning outcome. And the last one would be to give students voice and choice, to let them choose how to demonstrate their learning and their potential, seeing their strengths and understanding them, and to boost their motivation and accommodate to their different learning strengths. That was the final topic of the webinar. We have a short feedback form, and we would also like to hear from you if you have any questions or